what would be your top 3 priorities coming out of what you've been saying in our planning for the recovery from the pandemic once the immediate danger is over?
So I reflect on your question, and it was a very strange feeling because I have no intention to get public office again. And as I said, it is much more difficult even now than compared to 5 or 10 years ago. When my first successor, Polish Prime Minister Tusk, became President of the European Council, once told me after 2 years in office, Herman, he said, the European Council you have known doesn't exist anymore. And it was after the refugee crisis. There was so many tensions in this club of prime ministers and presidents that the spirit that I have not created, but I have discovered, the spirit of we are all in the same boat during the Eurozone crisis, that spirit vanished and disappeared because the tensions around migration were domestically so strong that they had a repercussion in the European Council. So there I'm really concerned. And for me, the primary concern would be for all the 27 countries, unfortunately we lost the UK, would be to work together to emerge from the crisis in solidarity. I think solidarity is now also for the European Union, for society as a whole, but for the Union, a key word. The last weeks, important steps have been taken, but not yet sufficient to fully safeguard the euro area. And I will not go deeper in that topic, but it's a crucial one. Because without solidarity, we cannot save the Eurozone, and thus we cannot save the European Union, and thus we cannot save the biggest peace project in European history. So often there is much more at stake than most people think. It's not about the technicalities of a relaunch program. Of course, there is a technical dimension, but you have to be aware what is at stake. And we cannot have a European Union without solidarity. And that's my first, my first priority is to work on that solidarity. The second concern is, of course, to bring unemployment back as quickly as possible to its pro-corona levels. You have seen in the United States, they have now 25 million more unemployed than 2 weeks ago. And here we have organized all kinds of temporary unemployment schemes, so it is less visible, but it's also there. The relaunch of the economy needs to come with real forward-looking investment, with a focus to climate, as I said, health, and fighting inequalities between and within member states. Unfortunately, these inequalities have increased since March, and they come on top of new inequalities that have emerged in recent years. So for me, social cohesion is a top priority, and without it, populism will continue to rise. So we have solidarity and we have social cohesion. And my last priority would be to discuss with the member states what lessons we can learn together from the crisis. After all, those member states remain competent in most domains. Europe is not a superstate. In the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was looking at Europe. Europe is not competent in health and social matters. It's as simply as that. So we have discovered that it's possible to work differently with less useless mobility and with a better work-life balance. That's one of, let's say, the things we learned during this crisis. We can do it with less stress and with more harmony. Of course, I'm not speaking about the parents with the children who cannot attend school, but in on average, we see possibilities to organize working life better and to have other kinds of investments to protect the future. And another thing is the input of scientists has proven to be crucial. Their advice should be important also in other areas. I'm of course thinking of climate change. It will help to improve the quality of political decisions and to think in the longer term. We know that there are tragedies ahead of us, but let's politicize and polarize less in our societies. So we see all kinds of new possibilities to have a society of dialogue instead of a society where all issues became polarized issues. I have seen many examples in my country these recent weeks, but it shouldn't be a one-time thing. If there is not more trust between politics and citizens, between politics and civil society, we are not preparing the future. And that will require a great effort from all moderate forces. And again, trust is an immaterial capital without which there is no community. I don't know if many of our listeners are familiar with German, but in German they have a much more than just an expression with just more than playing with words. More Gemeinschaft, more community, and less Gesellschaft, less society. So I see all kinds of positive signals, but now we have to focus on those positive signals. We have to capitalize on it and to make them lasting. Otherwise, we will return sooner than I fear to some kind of business as usual. So there are many lessons to draw from this crisis, also strongly related to values, not only to the way we are conducting our economies and reorganizing the health sector and so on, but underlying, without this feeling for solidarity, social cohesion, dialogue, nothing will work. Nothing will work.
What message of hope would you, or how would you express this hope, this virtue, to leaders dealing, as you said, with the complex and threatening dangers that we're all facing at the moment, and also not only the leaders, but to the most vulnerable people suffering the effects of the crisis, the corona crisis today? I mean, you've said a couple of times, we're all in the same boat. Some people would say we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. What was the best speech you heard during this this crisis?
Well, the best speech I heard was from a non-elected head of state. It was of Queen Elizabeth. For me, it was a message of support to all those in the care sector, to all those simply doing their best. It was a call to work together and the confidence that we can also overcome this crisis. And that's absolutely key. Again, we mentioned the word hope in the beginning of our conversation, in the midst of our conversation. You shouldn't take away perspective. You have to encourage all the time hope, not in a way that's artificial and that is not taking into account the different positions in which we are, the inequality you are referring to, but always looking at, there is a way out. Of course, in Britain, she was referring to the war. And Britain came out of the war successfully, was the winner of the war. So for a politician, for somebody with the responsibility, from utmost importance that is not only speaking about the efforts, the that has to be taken the Churchillian way of speaking, but also opening hope. That struck me that she, at the end of her speech, said, "We will meet again." Of course, it's also for the older generation who recall this famous song of Vera Lynn, "And we will meet again." We are all now isolated, but one day, we will open the doors and we will greet each other again. We will embrace each other. We will shake hands each other. And that's from utmost importance, that you give that kind of message. So politics is, of course, policies, but it has also to do with moral leadership. That's much more than just communication. Communication, that's selling things. Policy must allow people to no longer have to fear for their health and even their lives, but also that they will soon have work again. And that's of course something that is really urgent. Otherwise, there is no elementary hope. But again, keeping this perspective that we will overcome the crisis is from utmost importance. When we get out of this, it won't be because the overpaid managers or sportsmen or entertainers and others, but when we come out of this crisis, it will be through the dedication of ordinary people in the health sector, the police, education, and many others. And look at after the First World War, 1980, universal suffrage was introduced in recognition of the sacrifices of ordinary people. They were rewarded. You have no voting rights. In my country, by the way, only for men. After 1945, after the Second World War, we recognized the sacrifices brought by ordinary people during the great crisis of the 30s and during the war. And then we introduced Social Security. In my country, we gave voting rights to women only after the Second World War. And we are not the only ones. France was also in that case. Wow. So after a war, there is this need to rebalance society. Of course, the coronavirus is not a war, but there are comparisons that you can make with the spirit of a war, because we are all in the same boat or in the same storm or in the same boat in the storm. But what you need is some kind of reversal of values. In this pre-corona society, there was this dominance of money, and we have to reverse the order of priorities. We need that reversal of values, and so we have to look at the people who saved us in the corona crisis, who risked their lives, and how can we show our respect with them? How can we reward them? How can we build an other kind of society? And in my view, Christians have to play a role in this endeavor. Not only them, but they have a very specific role, to play. And let's hope that we can assume that.
Many of the people listening to your thoughts will be meditators. What do you think about meditation?
Meditation let's say, when I was at school and later on, was more related to thinking, just thinking. Not at the technical matters, but about the meaning of life, our personal destination, about the place of God in our lives. That's what we call meditate. I discovered also, thanks to you, that meditation is also that, but there are ways to foster my first definition of meditation. So how to liberate your mind, how bring your mind more open to the essence of things. So we have to push back a lot of, I don't find the right word, but you have to push back that what prevents you to go to the essence. And there are techniques for that. And I say to myself that I'm not always very gifted to learn those techniques, although I think it is a matter of conviction and of patience and of hard work. It takes an effort. And then you are more ready to go to the essence of things and to the essence of life. One of the things that I learned in reading you and other experts in meditation is that you can change the course of your life, and meditation is helpful for that. You have not to be locked in, so to speak, in the rat race, in business as usual, in what we consider as normal. Because if you don't reflect deeper into the meaning of your life and what to do with your life, what to do with this 60, 70, 80 years we have here on earth, if you have not taken the time to reflect on that, when something happens then in your personal life, you are desperate. You are desperate. And that's also what's in some way happening in our society. We are so used to have this normal, rational organization of our life. And all of a sudden came the virus. It happened in one place far away in China, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, it's disturbing the totality, not only of our personal life, but of society. And because we have not reflected on it, we have not prepared it, all of a sudden we are confronted with it, then in some way we are desperate. We have to looking for new ways of looking at things to reorganize not only our life, but also to find an answer to what are we doing? And I think that meditation is actually a preparation to that kind of situation in life and even in society. It's a technique that helps us not only to prepare for the worst, and that's the negative, but to open our mind, to liberate this positive energy, and to become more happy. That's as simple as that. And in my definition, happiness is also related to the openness to what's going beyond your ego. It's openness to the others, and for the Christians, to the other, with a capital. And there I think that meditation can really be helpful. I try via other ways, but I think the day will come that you are right, that you need also those techniques to reach the same goal.
I asked you if you could end this session with one or two of your recently composed haikus, or maybe say a brief word about what a haiku is and what and why you like it, why it's a practice or a medium that you have found enriching and helpful to you.
Technically, haiku is a very short poem, 17 syllables. But it has to be in relation with nature and with the seasons. Otherwise, it is not a haiku. You then just 17 syllables and you write something. No, there is always a strong link with nature and seasons. And in the last 5 syllables, you have to surprise the reader, to make him think some kind of confrontation. 5 syllables. Huh? So haiku, you need a very conscious attitude. You have to look around yourself. You let yourself surprised by things happening in nature. And then you can, you have to find the words, of course, because it's poetry. But then you have to transmit some message to the reader. I give you just examples. And just before I read some of my last verses, you asked me, how did you came to haiku? I think that haiku came to me. Again, this was a coincidence. All my life is made of a lot of coincidences. It was a priest that gave me a book about haikus. And actually, he was the founder of the haiku movement in Flanders. And I read it, but I was not ready for it. So I saw all those verses and poems, some better written than others. But years later, I felt all of a sudden the need to take up the book again, and then I was mentally ready to enter into this world of nature, being part of the main, part of the cosmos, and yeah, from that moment on, I start writing those poems. But it was not only an experience of beauty, as you mostly have with poetry. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. It's the philosophy behind haiku. I give you just a few examples, that becomes clear. So in my garden, I'm looking at my garden now. Until 2 weeks ago, we have a lot of trees here, and one of the trees was still bare. And the trees around it, they were blossoming. And so I was writing this poetry. Of course, I have written it in Dutch, and what I'm now telling you is a poem in haiku in English. But I think it keeps, let's say, the message. I have to read it twice because it's so short that you first time you don't get it immediately. A still bare tree mid flowering blossoms, lonely but not alone. So you see this bare tree and all the rest is happy, is blossoming, and he is still alone, but he is not lonely. He will catch up. And actually, we are now 2 weeks later, he is blossoming. He catched up. He catched up. And that's a message of hope. So you can be yourself a bare tree, but you are surrounded by other people. You are lonely, but not alone. They will help you to overcome that handicap. Another is here, there's a small pond here in the neighborhood. Peaceful pond, ducks land slower, not aware of storms. So those ducks, they're living in the moment. We are always projecting ourselves. Before the Corona crisis, we were peaceful ducks that land slower. And at that time, we were not aware of the storm either. It changed. But I saw this pond and those ducks as a symbol of our society. But you made an observation in nature. It's only later on that you have other thoughts. And then a walk in the wood here, also very, very close to Brussels. Pretty for just a moment, the purple hyacinths, yearly appointment. Pretty for just a moment, the purple hyacinths, yearly appointment. They are there for a few weeks and then they die. But each year they come back. And again, this is a message of hope. They are, of course, only pretty for just a moment and for a few weeks for the hyacinths. But when we are there next year, and if we have the privilege still to live, then we'll see them again. We will meet again, as Verlin said. We will meet again.